All right, Brian. I'm excited to dive in with you today. I've been a big fan of Brave, both the token, the browser, the project, the team for a while. Maybe to kick us off, do you want to maybe tell me the origin story of Brave? What was kind of the team? I know you had worked with Jonathan, your co-founder at Mozilla prior, but was there a moment when you guys were like out to lunch or just talking and it clicked where the business model of advertising on the internet can be fundamentally changed using the browser in particular as a leverage point? Would love to hear just kind of the early days.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. And just a quick question. It's Brendan is the co-founder, Brendan Ike.
What did I say?
Jonathan, I think.
Oh, sorry.
he's actually, he's pretty well known. He's like the creator of JavaScript.
Yeah.
And the co-founder of Mozilla. So I guess our paths crossed at Mozilla, where I did I started with a 3-month contract there and kind of, I was kind of hired in and they weren't too sure if they wanted to hire me at first. So I was kind of left for dead. I was with the manager. He's like, yeah, I don't want to have one-on-ones because I don't do one-on-ones with contractors. So I was given kind of like no guidance on what to work on there and like that. But long story short, like within the first year, I had submitted like over 215 patches. I had posted 200 issues. So I started to work on lots and lots of things and kind of found my own way within the company. Got hired full time right at that 3-month mark. So they, because of the output that I was doing, they knew they wanted to hire me. Got moved to a manager that wasn't as busy, so that I had time to do one-on-ones and stuff.
And was your attitude then just like, hey, I'm coming from behind here. I just need to crush it. And you were...
Yeah, it was kind of scary. Well, I was coming from a startup, like I had done my own startup before that for about 10 years. So it's coming from that, and I left that, which was a good paying job, and I went to Mozilla, and it was kind of like a big risk at the time, because I had really young kids at the time. So it was a risk of, this is only for 3 months. If it doesn't work out, what do I do? So I'm like leaving this company that I had started to go work at Mozilla at the time. So, yeah. I became a peer, which is basically the ability to do code reviews on different parts of the code base. So I became a peer in like these sections like Firefox itself, toolkit, image library, widgets, and a bunch of other sections. I worked on some big features like silent updates. So they didn't have silent updates at first. So updates would be like update adoption would be pretty slow for Mozilla Firefox at first. So I improved that. Worked on Project Snappy, which was basically making Firefox a lot faster, so finding performance bottlenecks and improving it. I did this like website. It was almost like a Khan Academy clone, but a lot smaller scale for contributors of Mozilla. And I made, I don't remember how many, but maybe 50 to 100 different videos there about just onboarding new developers to be able to work on Firefox there. And then a bigger project that I worked on was right around the time that Windows 8 came out. It was a Windows 8 Metro browser. It was like a special kind of browser at the time. That's where I got the experience of creating a browser from scratch, basically from there. And then a little bit of work on Firefox OS as well. But all those things, I was blogging about them when I did them. And there's this website called Planet Mozilla, which is an aggregation of all the bloggers that do work at Mozilla. And a lot of article writers like CNET, et cetera, watch that. And so I was kind of mentioned pretty much every Firefox release. I was being mentioned about the work that I was doing because of the blogs that I was writing. And then that kind of made a name for myself, which kind of led into Brave and why Brendan probably originally reached out to me, I think.
How big was the team at that point at Mozilla?
When I started at Mozilla, it was about 200 people, I believe. And when I left, it was about 1,600. So it was a pretty big increase of people throughout that period.
And I'm curious what the maybe the early days, or if it changed at all, what the Mozilla model is. It's a free browser, obviously. Does Mozilla have multiple? Yeah,
they're not for profit, but the way that they make money is through a search deal with Google. So I think something like 99% maybe of their revenue comes from this search deal. So even though they're a not-for-profit, your interest can be kind of swayed, I think, at that point by the person that's paying all the bills.
Is that, it's kind of surprising to me that that would be the strategy for Google, given they have Chrome, and Chrome is newer, I believe, than Mozilla. So Mozilla was first in the market after.
A lot of the original people from Mozilla left and started Chrome. And Chrome also includes like Netscape Public Library. I think it was called NPL. But a big part of the code there is even from Mozilla's browser. So,
do you know if Chrome wasn't originated in Google? Is it who is it similar in the sense that it's a nonprofit or?
No, Chrome is from Google. So there is a Chromium browser that Chrome is based on, which is open source. And that's also what Brave is based off of. So there's this Chromium thing, and then Chrome is based off of it, and Brave is also based off that same Chromium thing. And there's deviations from Chromium in each different product as well.
Yeah.
Chrome is definitely very Google, and it calls out to Google a lot and shares a lot of things to Google.
Yeah, totally. How did you sort of make that decision early days, whether you build on Chromium or take another route?
Yeah, so we didn't actually build on Chromium to start. So when we first started the company, we decided that we both came from Firefox, so it made sense to base it off of Gecko, which is the engine behind Firefox. So our first version was based on Gecko. And then we decided to change later on because we wanted to kind of at first create this HTML-based browser, which could be updated at any time with the UI. But we kind of found that the APIs weren't that built out for it, and basing it off of Chrome would have been a lot easier. And then there's also this uphill battle where all websites, since Chrome has so much market share, they want to be compatible with Chrome and not be compatible. They don't necessarily test for smaller share market browsers like Firefox, which sadly it is now a smaller share market browser. Mm-hmm. So for web compat reasons alone, it made sense to do the switch at that time when we were still pretty young, and then we rebuilt everything on Chromium.
Yeah. Even this website we're using now, Riverside FM, to record this podcast, I had previous issues when I was using. It was, I forget if I had Mozilla. I was using Chrome. I now use Brave, and we're switching Brave, and to me, Brave and Chrome were so interchangeable. I remember the day I got rid of Chrome, and it was like, okay, I deleted it off my computer. Let's see if I can survive, and never look back. It's like,
cool.
Yeah. And I have to believe that a lot of that is attributed to the underlying open source Chromium infrastructure that you built on, right? Because there's some things that just would take you time. It would take other companies time to build into if you didn't do that.
Yeah, and when we first started Brave as well, so I mentioned we started with Gecko, we went to Chromium, but we actually started after the Gecko thing. We were based on something called Electron, which includes libchromium content for the rendering, it's called. But it wasn't really meant for creating browsers. So like they disable sandboxing, for example, which is a big no-no. So we had to do a lot of patching on that. But being based on Electron meant we kind of had to recreate the entire UI at that point. So this was like the second rewrite after the Gecko rewrite. We rewrote it based on Electron. And then it just became so many small user interface bugs, and people like really noticed very small differences from Chrome, and they didn't like it. So that's why we kind of rewrote it again a third time after that. When that didn't work out, we wrote it on as a Chromium fork. And then at that point, we could adopt all the UI and get all the benefits of every Chromium update that Google was making. Like if they're adding something to the security panel, we get it. If they add like tab groups, we get it, for example. So what the strategy was at that point was basically we can reuse all of Chromium. We can stub out any calls that happen to Google. They kind of have this account system kind of built in as well, where if you log into one website, you kind of log into the browser. So we didn't want that. We didn't want to auto log in people to like the browser itself. So we disabled that as well. If you search Chromium deviations in Brave, you'll find a wiki page, and there's like over 50 different things, services that we kind of disable from Google that kind of just leak your data to Google.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty.
Yeah, yeah, that's a major. Regardless of the whole crypto thing, which is obviously a big part of the vision with Brave, but just not having default on data, like you said, data leaking was like immediately interesting and worth using.
Yeah, and then the other big thing that we did really early on was tracking protection. So when you do tracking protection, you're stopping like malware, you're stopping all these iframes from loading. Sometimes you inadvertently stop ads themselves. So there are some good ads, but we try to block just the tracking ones that are bad. But when you do block an ad, it has a lot of benefits. Like you're not using as much memory. These ads a lot of times come in the form of an iframe, and each iframe then can make like 100 other sub-resource requests as well. So you're saving like hundreds of megs of bandwidth just for like a typical browser session. And like hundreds or thousands of trackers even for that same time frame.
Yeah, it's almost like barnacles that have accumulated.
Yeah,
where
and it really
you just
makes
have to reset.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference for speed as well.
Yeah, in hindsight, was the decision to use Chromium obvious? Is it something to where you look back and think, oh, we should have just used them first? Or
it's hard to say that because, like, at the time we had a very small team, right? So we started with a little bit of funding. We hired a small team, and a lot of the team, like my background is mostly C++, so it would have made sense. But a lot of the team's background was more like JavaScript heavy, and Electron allows you to create your user interface with like HTML and JS. So we were able to get to market with the product a lot faster by basing it off of like Electron was the first browser that we actually released. And if we would have went with Chromium, it's hard to say whether like if we would have even got to that first step, right? We were able to, with the strategy that we did pick, we were able to get something released and get some adoption and get our name out there and start to reveal our plans. But if we would have went the other way, maybe we wouldn't have even got there, right? So it's hard to say, but yeah. I don't have regrets. I mean, everything worked out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, totally. And who knows?
A different
possibility. And from the user's perspective, they wouldn't know the difference, or would they? When you switched from, say, Electron to,
it was a big difference of how it looked and felt. So everyone kind of wanted Chrome, but without tracking, and they were kind of just putting up with Brave, and we actually became something that people wanted to use once we made the switch. And before that, people kind of felt like, yeah, I should use this, but I really hate having to use it because it just doesn't work quite right. And after we made the switch, everyone was just happy to launch it, and they would go to that first.
Yeah. What's Google's attitude around Chromium? I know open source obviously has the benefit of allowing many different people to contribute to projects for free, so you can build something sort of decentralized. I don't know if that's kind of the right word. In this case, it kind of works against them because Brave would be a competitor to Chrome.
Yeah.
Chrome provides obviously the search engine by default with Google, and that's Google's largest revenue source. Is that, in hindsight, do they look at the Chromium project and think, oh, we should have kept that in-house, or is this just kind of an inevitable?
I think they couldn't do that even if they wanted to, because a lot of the browser is reused from previous open source projects. So because of that license, they needed to keep the same license basically for what they built on top of it. So even if they wanted to do that, they couldn't today, or even before they couldn't do that either. But yeah, like today, like let's say they could do it hypothetically. Today there's like Opera's based on it. Microsoft Edge is based on it. We're based on it. So it wouldn't be hard for all these companies to come together to create that other open source fork. And Google benefits just as well as we do from all the contributions from all these different browser projects as well. Like the whole code base benefits basically because everyone's contributing to that same code base. I mean, we each have our own forks and a lot of the changes only go into our forks, but there is that commonality that gets uplifted everywhere.
Yeah. And just on the Brave company itself, just to set the scale of it. So tell me if these numbers are off significantly, but it seems like from what I researched, about 160 people work at the company. There's about 45 million raised. And with the token, looks like about $1 billion market cap on the token. Does that seem about right?
I haven't checked the token recently, so I'm not sure. The rest of the numbers sound about right. It's 50 million monthly active users, which is pretty significant, right? Last year in December, it was only at 24 million. And for the past 5 years, we've been doubling in user growth. So by the end of this year, like we expect probably about 100 million monthly active users using Brave.
Yeah, yeah. Brave was the first token I bought outside of Bitcoin. I remember watching the video, and I watching the early pitch and thinking like, this makes so much sense and it's such a big idea. So yeah, on the token economics or tokenomics, has this changed? So as I understand it, there's tokens that are minted by the Brave organization. People can use these tokens to buy through the Brave browser. Advertisers can show people ads. The option for consumers who are using the browser is optional to watch the ads. And if people choose to watch the ads, then they receive a portion of that token that their advertiser is paying. And then there's a fee wrapped into that.
It's very close. So like how I describe it is like there's advertisers, there's users, and there's publishers. So we'll start with advertisers. The advertiser wants to advertise, right? So they go to Brave and they're like, we want to advertise our product or our service or crypto project, whatever it is, right? So then they can either buy those ads that are delivered to the Brave users. They can either buy it with BAT or they can buy it with USD. So BAT is the Brave token that you're talking about. It's called Basic Attention Token. So if they use USD, then what we do is we turn around and buy BAT with that. And then we distribute 70% of that revenue share directly to the users that are using the browser that have ads enabled. So ads for the users are not enabled by default. It's an opt-in thing. And users can turn it on, and then they can later turn it off if they don't like it, whatever they want to do. And those ads come up as kind of like system notifications. So it's not like a traditional web browser where it's like within the content or big flashing ad that's blocking your pop-up ad or whatever, right? There's system notifications, so they're a little bit less invasive, I think. And so users that turn it on, they get this revenue share into their Brave rewards section, basically, in the form of BAT. And then they can use that BAT. There's a feature called auto contribute, which basically figures out of all the websites that you visit, the percentage of time that you spend on them, and then it makes contributions to those websites automatically. Or else they can also just do like a one-time tip of the BAT that they have to like a content creator like yourself. So content creator is anyone that has a website, a Twitch account, a Twitter account, a GitHub account, etc. And how you sign up to be, we call it a verified creator, is you go to like creators.brave.com. And you can sign up for that. And that basically gives all Brave users the ability to be able to auto-contribute to you or to tip to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And some of the other projects too, or at least one of them, is that you have the BAT tip button integrated into social networks. So on Twitter, you could go on.
Yeah.
I saw Twitter, but I imagine you have or are at least planning on doing things like Stack Overflow, Quora, places where people are contributing to networks.
Yeah, there's Stack Overflow, there's GitHub. Like if you like someone works on an issue or a pull request for you, and you want to tip them, you can do that with the inline tip button.
Is Reddit on there?
Yeah, Reddit's on there.
Yeah. Which are the most used of the popular networks? Can you?
I don't know offhand, but I can look it up. There's this contributor site named bravebat.info. It's not even run by us, but they kind of get the data. So it's like YouTube is the highest, and then Twitter, and then Reddit's about the same size as any typical website, around the same size as Twitch, Vimeo, and GitHub's about half of what a website is.
Yeah. How does the Brave organization function? So 70% of what a advertiser would pay goes to the user, 30% or some portion close to that goes to the publisher. How does the Brave organization structure itself?
Actually, 70% goes to the user, 30% goes to Brave. And then the users then contribute to the website that they visit with that 70%. Typically, they could put in funds separate from that and contribute that way as well, but typically it's from the amount from the revenue share that they'll contribute.
Okay. And would a say YouTube creator, Reddit, somebody on the social media site or somewhere, would they have a indication as to what they should expect? I mean, do you see like tipping converges at, 1% of whatever?
Yeah, the users can log on to like creators.brave.com and they can set whatever levels they want for the tip levels. And it kind of, when you do click to tip a certain creator, it'll come up with like the different options that they've pre-selected, and users can tip at that level. So for some, might be a tip of $1 might be appropriate, but for others, maybe they don't have a lot of users and they're high quality content or something like that. They might want to put the levels at, I don't know, like $100 or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So they can do it that way, yeah.
It's kind of interesting, like tipping. I know early on I interviewed one of the guys at Coinbase, and they were launching this tipping product. This was like I want to say 2016, 2017. And it didn't work out. They dropped the product. And if I remember, Nick Tamanio was the product manager of it. And he said it just didn't get adoption. Obviously, that was a different world, and that it wasn't nearly as adopted. Crypto in general 5 years ago, but is tipping, it's not obvious to go with tipping. I'm sure you guys had a lot of conversations about that internally, whether it's tipping or set by publishers themselves. How do you think about tipping? Because obviously inherent to tipping is the voluntary nature of it. You're willingly giving people money as opposed to having a fixed set price for it.
Yeah, I think that's where the auto contribute comes in, and that's like on when you turn on ads, that's on by default, and it'll auto contribute to those verified creators for you, so you don't have to go through that explicit action. There are a subset of users though that want to earn that, and they can disable the auto contribute and never tip and just withdraw the bet if they want to, and that's their right to do. Just like they could use a different browser with uBlock, for example, or even Brave with uBlock and block things. There's no way to do that. Yeah. But at least the publishers are getting some portion of those users that are blocking that. Whereas if they were using, for example, Chrome with uBlock, they wouldn't be getting any kind of compensation. So it does allow publishers like yourself to monetize from those users in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, do you see that as the end state? Does that feel, I don't know what the answer is, but it's, I would think that it's how to articulate this. Tipping to me feels a bit vulnerable to sways where people can all of a sudden just decide to not tip and still use the product. Even the Chrome extension with uBlock, it seems like if Chrome really wanted to prevent that, they could. I don't know if that's technically possible, but
they can stop doing extensions. Like they're already kind of limiting what extensions can do. So, but you can still block though. You just have to block it in a different way, in a less ideal way, I guess. But I mean, the reason it's better is because the ad system in general, like the way the ads work today in Chrome when you're browsing the web, is that all your information is getting sucked in and shared throughout these ad networks. With Brave, what happens is that Brave delivers to each of these browsers an ad catalog, and then there's on-device machine learning that's matching your interests to that ad catalog ads. And then basically those ads are displayed. So your information never leaves the device in that, because the ad matching is happening on your device and it's not happening in these ad networks. So at least for the user, it's a much better deal because like your privacy is withheld and you can get paid for viewing ads, which in the traditional system you would never get paid for viewing ads. Like you kind of get a bad deal that way. So what's your favorite part about working on this project now? You've been on it for quite a while, 6 years, something in that ballpark. Are you more energized now than when you started, or are you feeling like you guys have largely accomplished what you set out to do? How do you sort of relate to the product mission? I think it's always different. So that keeps me interested as well. So like when we started, we were 2 people, right? Brendan and I. And then over time, it's grown and grown and grown, and we're at about like 160, I think, people now. So there's different challenges as you go along, but I think I find like the most exciting parts is where I'm working on like a major rewrite. Like for example, when we created, we call it Brave Core, when we went off of Electron and onto this new Chromium fork. And you're just kind of like hacking away, doing late nights, working on things, and there's no like release pressure at all. And then eventually you get to that point where you release it. So that was probably one of the best projects I think that I worked on. And then also like this cryptocurrency wallet that we released recently was kind of like the same thing. had this big vision of a product we want to do, and we were able to just kind of like create it from scratch and figure out how it works. And that was like a lot of fun, basically.
Yeah, yeah. How do you spend your time learning about crypto? Do you just focus on what you need to build at Brave, or do you consciously attend to other projects and research them? And I'm curious how you allocate your time to stay up.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Like I do running most mornings, and I'll listen to podcasts on those runnings, and usually like crypto related content. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it's from that. I would say the interest first started probably around the time that we started with Brave, because the very first Brave version had a prototype to tip with Bitcoin. And actually we released it was more than a prototype, it was actually released that way. But the transaction fees just got to be crazy high, like they were like $40, $50, something like that. And you can't tip someone $1 or even less than that, let's say. You can't tip someone a few baht, for example, if you're paying $40 USD per transaction.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Or in that case, Bitcoin, but yeah.
Yeah. What are your favorite podcasts? What do you listen to?
Like Data Dash. What are the other ones? I don't know. There's a bunch of them that I listen to that I haven't
Yeah.
Fox Mining was another one.
Yeah. I'm curious on the wallet and the bat, just the architecture of it. Do you recall what some of the major decisions were when you were thinking about how both the creation of the token would work, allocation? Obviously, there's some big decisions that you have to make when you start off building this. I'm curious what those were and how you thought through those.
The token cell was. You mentioned earlier, like that we could create supply, but like it's a cap supply. It was originally going to be like it is still 1.5 billion tokens, and then there was part of that, which was I think 300 million of those tokens were part of the user growth pool, which was basically to incentivize the growth of Brave and BAT ecosystem. I think the token sale was like sold out within like. I think it was like 30 seconds or something like that, or less maybe. It was like pretty instant. When the token sale started, I kind of like reloaded the page to see if it had started yet. And by the time the page finished reloading, it was taking a bit to reload. And by the time it finished reloading, I saw a Slack message. And it's like, it's done. I'm like, what do you mean it's done? Because we weren't
Jesus, sure really?
Like if everything was going to sell or not, yeah.
And obviously that was far faster than you thought it was going to be. What attributed to that?
Yeah, and I think the way that it was set up was that if it didn't reach whatever the goal was, then all the tokens would be like refunded, basically returned. So, like at the time, we weren't sure. I guess it probably should have had a higher price or something.
30 seconds, man, that's crazy. That must have been one of the fastest ever.
It was 36 million raised in under 30 seconds. Yeah.
36 million. That has to be by far the fastest raise, start to finish. Right?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I didn't keep track of others, but it was like crazy.
Regardless. Yeah. And that was kind of, what year was that? 2017? 18?
Yeah, I think 17.
Yeah. So it's kind of during that peak ICO time, which certainly helps, right?
Yeah, I think that came just after token sale.
Yeah. So in hindsight, all right, I guess knowing what you know now, just for kicks, would you have raised more? Is that kind of the conclusion when it's sold out that fast?
We definitely could have, yeah. In time, we could have probably did 10x.
Yeah. Fascinating. So you didn't do another sale. Obviously, you do one, and then the currency's out there, and you have a fixed cap. How did you choose that? How did you choose the 1.5 billion tokens?
I think like we wanted to keep it this unit bias, right? So like you don't want to have a smaller amount. And there's unit bias, I guess, that matters, that comes into play. You don't want each token, for example, costing $1,000, whatever. But like each token can be divided, I think, to 18 decimal places. So, I think around the dollar mark made sense, like as an initial kind of target or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah. So do you think of it as how much money flow? I mean, if this doesn't make any sense, stop me. But do you think of it as how much money flows through online advertising today, and then factor in if Brave were to, take over, say, 30% of that or some significant portion of it, then there would be X number of Brave tokens people would be receiving per day based on how many people use the browser.
If you look at the white paper, I think it's on the Basic Attention Token website. The white paper kind of gets into the economics of it and like the velocity and all these different calculations about how that works. But yeah. Someone else mostly worked on that though.
Yeah. So you didn't dive much into the white paper portion of it at that time.
Yeah, it was Scott Laughlin, I think, was the main person that was basically creating that ERC-20 contract.
Yeah. So what's going on now? What are you most excited about when you show up and work on Brave?
Yeah, so I think like what I really like working on lately is like the Web3 vision kind of thing. So last year we added in IPFS support built into the browser, so you can access. By default, when you install Brave, you can access a lot more sites than you can in a browser like Firefox or Chrome, because you can't even access those sites without extra extensions. And if you do, then you have to kind of run your own node on the side as well, which is kind of not great, right? Mm-hmm. So you have access to a lot more content on IPFS. I think like dApps is a big thing as well. So the ability to just go to Uniswap, for example, and swap tokens that you have. You can't do that without installing MetaMask or another extension or Coinbase Wallet, for example, on Chrome. So just access to this kind of new world of Web3, I think is an exciting thing to me.
Yeah. How do you think about it? I mean, how do you think of Web3? Web3 and the Metaverse, people have such different concepts of it. I think the Facebook video and Pivot certainly put it in the forefront of many people's minds, but it's not obvious how it rolls out. We obviously have the movie The Matrix to model our future after. But what do you, how do you sort of conceptualize what is in the near to medium term?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it makes sense with Metaverse. Like, there's COVID going around and things like that. Like, if you meet someone online, you're not going to be susceptible to that, like sickness and things like that. But I like the real world. there's this thing with nature that you need to get out there, and it's good for your mental health and your well-being to get out there. So I hope people don't kind of shut in and live in this virtual world and become unhealthy. That would be a bad thing. But I think there's a lot of growth happening, and there's more and more Web3 users every day. And I really think that browsers like Firefox or Chrome or Safari have missed the boat, basically. They're missing the boat, and I don't think they're going to be trying to get on the boat until it's too late, basically.
So let me ask you this way. In what way would an average person who works from home on their computer, how would they tactically interface with Web3 in 3 years? In a few years when it's really substantial, when people aren't just trading cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, I mean, just going to any website that has Web3 backend, like the user might not even realize like that it'll be using it. But today there's this wallet icon when you install Brave, and when you go to a site, you can click on this connect to dApp button. Once you connect, it kind of gives permission through a pop-up panel that comes up. So I think these user interfaces are going to be improved more and more. You might not even realize in the future that the website that you're using requires a connection to the blockchain that you're using, whether that be Solana or Ethereum. It'll be kind of just built in. And right now, today, like you kind of have this thing where web browsers are one thing, wallets are another thing. I see those things as kind of the same product over time. It's like the web browser is the wallet. They're both needed for this access to this new layer, whether that's like swapping tokens in a token economy or logging into something. It's like an identity provider as well. NFTs, for example. There's a lot of different use cases, but there's a lot that's not discovered as well that people will see over time.
Do you see the browser, maybe at least Brave, but maybe more so, the browser being a component of the two-dimensional rectangular interface that we're using now, and that the concept of a browser will fundamentally change if and when we put on some kind of headset, not Oculus per se, but if there is a very lightweight, easy. I could see, by the way, Apple's biggest product could be this thing, the Apple Watch. They already have Apple Watch. Apple Vision. Yeah, I bet Vision's what they end up calling. Who knows?
Yeah, there's augmented reality, and then there's VR, and I think both those are gonna grow over time.
Yeah. In that circumstance, when you do wear something that provides you the richness of an experience that you have when you look through your own eyes, there is no browser at that point, right? Or is there in some capacity, or how do you think?
There's maybe like spaces or something. Like there's like a space is kind of like a tab almost, right? There's different tabs, and you can zoom out of it, and you can see all the different spaces or all the different tabs, and you can zoom into a different one and join that space, for example. So I think it's kind of very similar in concept.
Yeah, it's kind of a window, right?
Yeah, it's like which world are you currently zoomed into, and you can zoom out and join a different world if you want to.
Yeah. Is that a topic of conversation in any practical sense internally, or is that just kind of too far out to even think about?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit far. Like users, I think, still want they still want a traditional web browser, but there are people that are looking into like user interface, different ways to look at user interface, and there's a bunch of different startups as well that are trying out different things, different web browsers. So I don't know what the ideal interface is. It's probably not like the way that it is now with Chrome, where you just Chrome and Brave, where you have like infinite tabs, and your tab bar just gets bigger and bigger over time until you get tired and you close the whole window and then restart from scratch. Yeah, there's got to be better ways to organize that. I think they'll be discovered over time as well. Yeah.
Is that exciting to you? I get the subtle vibe that you're not, you don't find it particularly compelling, or at least
I'm super practical personally, but luckily Brave has a lot of different type of people working here. So, I'm not a user interface guy whatsoever. I'm more of like a back end type of engineer. So that's probably why you get that vibe.
Yeah. Very fair. Very fair. Are you particularly excited about other projects or other things outside of Brave, technical projects or other? I'm excited to see like real use cases for NFTs evolve over time, like whether that be like property ownership and just different things like that, different use cases, I guess, for NFTs evolving, and just seeing where the crypto market goes in general. Like it's like watching a good TV series, just staying up to date with crypto news, because there's always something going down. So. Yeah, totally. I know. I love the intersection too of how crypto, how whatever is being built in crypto, whether it's decentralized finance, NFTs, etc., how it intersects with the real world. There was a good, I always find the interviews that leaders of the crypto companies will do with politicians being so entertaining, because that's like where the rubber meets the road. They're like, so, Mr. Coinbase, tell me about this USDC and what you're trying to do to the dollar, and it's super interesting, right? Because that's policy is, we live in a physical world. While we're creating a digital one, laws are, very practical and influential. Yeah. Does that play a role? Do you see, obviously being in Canada, there's a very close relationship to the US. Are there parts of the world, or either internally with your team or users that throw up big challenges, whether it's, working? Is Brave in China at all? Can it be in China?
It can. I think Brave.com is blocked in China unless you use a VPN. Probably because the built-in like Tor support that we have. Like you can create a Tor window. Through the interface. I mean, Canada's like it was at least it has an ETF there, which is good. Like a spot ETF, which is good. So I hope the US will do the same eventually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What do you think about privacy? Is that a overrated or underrated subject? Say, take the on the biggest spectrum, you have like the Edward Snowden release, the Prism program, where the U.S. government is instituting backdoor policies to major tech companies, and that's now
it's definitely important for a segment of users for sure. I don't think it's like the end all, like complete most important thing to users. It has a lot of beneficial side effects as well. Like I mentioned, like the speed of the browser, like you can load a page several factors of times faster by blocking those trackers and things that you don't want. The whole ad system that I described as well is built around allowing users to keep their privacy, not letting Google own you as well by using Brave. Like you get basically the same UI with enhancements, a lot of different enhancements like Speed Reader, for example, Brave News, for example.
Yeah. Well, even outside of Brave, I'm thinking there's a lot of people who are very skeptical / cautious / angry about having their data being collected and organized by large companies who are seeking profit and leak that to the government. Right. It's fine if we have perfect policies and rational moral systems, and but obviously we don't, and there's always edge cases. The best way to protect against that moral dilemma is just to do what Brave does, and it's just have zero user data. Don't collect user data whatsoever. There's no chance of breach. There's no temptation. Yeah. There's no way for a government agency to sway you because you don't have that data in the first place. Yeah. Is there a big pushback? Obviously, blocking all the ad trackers is not what the ad trackers want, and there's a lot of companies and money behind that. Is there any pressure, or are they perfectly fine to say,
Yeah, it's surprisingly there's been no pushback really. Maybe like in the very first year when the full concept of Brave came out, there was people that didn't like it at first, like those types of people. But since then, no, not really.
That's awesome.
Basically, like the user's in control of which content they consume. Yeah, they want to consume it. So there's no like legal basis against blocking certain things that a user doesn't want to see because the user gets to decide. That's why it's called the user agent. That's what it's called. So,
yeah. It really is an evolution of the browser. I mean, it did kind of get clunky and congested with all the ad trackers, and I think in the world that we live in, people that were working in these companies saw the ability to aggregate that data and sell better insights to companies who could sell out. So it made sense that they would do that, but it also makes sense that there would be I think of Brave as like the backlash to that. The opportunity for Brave exists because there was so much advertising without consent.
Yeah, there's not just like the user doesn't have to go to their browser and type in youtube.com and load a page. For example, like a browser might evolve, like Brave might evolve to just have, you want to access YouTube? Okay, here's your video viewer and it's optimized for YouTube, but it has none of the page loading or anything else from YouTube, for example. So that's possible. And there's a lot of different similar things, I guess, that like you can have custom interfaces depending on the site and only load what you want to load. It's really up to the user to decide how they want to consume content. I want to ask you another question just because I have you here and it's slightly off base, but I'm just fascinated. So, Brendan, you guys were the two founders of the company. What's it like working with him? He's obviously a super smart guy, both technically and then I think, how would you say it? Like his understanding of how the world works is really sharp. What do you notice working with him versus other people? Yeah, so if you like went to dinner with him, you'd quickly realize that he's like an expert in everything. You're talking to him with, he's definitely the most intelligent person I know. Like he's an expert in pretty much everything that you talk to him about. Like talking to me, I come off as like an average person, but you definitely realize the difference there. So yeah, he's a really interesting guy to know. Like working with him is great because like you get to learn things. And he's not like, the way he manages is kind of stepping back and letting things play out, and maybe very gently suggesting something and then giving you the agency to decide how that plays out yourself. But yeah, definitely learning a lot from having worked with him.
Yeah. Is he aggressively reading books, or is it just a genetic ability to remember literally everything he hears?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I assume he reads books. I think I've mentioned some books before, and he's heard of them. But I've also mentioned like something like South Park references before, and he also knew those. So.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Yeah, it's important. You have to be well-rounded enough to know what everyone else is watching and listening to, stay relevant, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool. That's interesting. Although not really surprising given his background. So ultra marathons, you and I both have done a few. You've done much longer and more of them than I have, but I certainly dipped my toe in to get a feel for them. So what motivates you to keep going on them? So I get the appeal, and I share your interest in the experience of running outdoors for long distances and being away from human beings in nature is a fucking awesome experience. And I love also the feeling of pushing your body to the point where you find what the borders are, being drained, crying, falling, getting cut, keep going. There's something about it that's like super primal. Do you feel, how do you relate to it?
I honestly, I need it to be a better person, I think, honestly. There's a lot of stress from running a company, like tons and tons of stress. And there's always people messaging you nonstop at all times, and just a lot of work. And it gives you that away time where you're just completely in control. If you want to turn left, you can turn left. If you want to go right, you turn right. Like you can just run out to some random county, wherever you want. It's very good for mental health and keeping the stress levels down. And I think that's like the main motivation for it. It just allows me to be a better person, I think, in general, and not be a jerk to people.
Yeah.
So it keeps me sane.
Yeah. Are there other things you've noticed that over the years you do that help you either be more productive, sane? Whether it's like, one thing I've noticed is just when I eat, if I'm not eating a breakfast, then I'm irritated. I have low attention in the mornings. That tends to carry on throughout the day. I'm 34 and I'm just starting to realize this about myself. Are there other things, or do you take the attitude of, on one end of the spectrum, some guys just come in hot in the morning and they're just like blitz as hard as they can all day till they fall asleep? Or do you think about these kind of things? Like
food wise, like I'm probably the same way. Like if I don't eat, I get grumpy. So I like to eat, and I guess that's a good thing because I do all this running because I like to eat as well. So. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you definitely do eat more. Although I find it, regardless of how much I ran, I could always be fat. I could always eat more food than I could burn. That's one thing. I guess the longer the distances, the more that is probably true. I think the skinniest runners are probably the ones that are doing like 5Ks, 10Ks at super fast speeds, and then as you get to the higher and higher distances, you can still do it and be more bulky because it's a different type of muscle and slow twitch versus instead of the fast twitch fibers in your muscles.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Give me the description of or the stats on the number of races you've done. I guess 100 milers, 50 milers, marathons.
Yeah, the longest one I did was over 200K. I'm still working on a 200-mile run I want to get to, but that's like during the 48-hour time frame. The type of races that I like the most are called backyard ultra races. So with those, you have like kind of like a mini race, a mini run, a mini loop every single hour. So you do 6.7 kilometers every hour. And each hour that starts again. So if you're not back by the time the next one starts, then you're out of the race. And there's no set distance. It just keeps going until there's one person left. So that's probably the format that'll eventually get to that 200-mile that I'm shooting for. Well, hopefully this year. We'll see.
What's that race? There's a documentary on it. It's like 20-mile loops.
Barkley Marathon, you think?
Yeah, Barkley. Yeah. Have you looked into that in any serious way?
Yeah. The one that I mentioned, the Backyard Ultras, there's one that's called Big's Backyard, which is kind of like the World Series of those. So all the winners of the Backyard Ultra races go and they compete at Big's Backyard. Now, if you win Big's Backyard, then you can get into Barkley. It's all the same guy, Lazarus Lake, who I had the opportunity to meet last year.
Really?
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I watched the documentary and I loved his. You have to pay the admittance fee of something like $1.25 or something, whatever it was.
Yeah, I think you have to bring a license plate or something for that one too.
Where did you meet him?
I did. It was called Little Dog Backyard Ultra. So it was the exact same course as the Big's World Series, and it's like a week or two before. I think it's just kind of like to test things out for the bigger race. So I got invited to that because a guy that I knew knows Lazarus, so he got me into it. Luckily, so I was able to do that course and kind of experience it. And now I got to try to this year try to win to get a representation into Big's backyard. So
yeah,
I'll do that this year.
So if you were to cover 200 miles, you're now pushing the limits of sleep. You're pushing what else? What other factors start to become major challenges? Obviously,
I've had trouble with in the past is sometimes we'll have like gut issues and which leads to vomiting and things like that.
Yeah.
So if you can keep that under control, the sleep is probably more difficult than even like the muscle strain and just you have to keep on top of things. But as time goes on, you have less and less time to do things, so you kind of have to prioritize like. Do I want to stretch for the 2 minutes that I have this loop before the next loop happens, or do I want to take a bite to eat, or what do you want to do? So, yeah.
Do you ever feel hallucinogenic? Do you start to? Have you ever had visions or?
I've heard of tons of people that have had that. I haven't had that yet.
Yeah,
we'll see. If I get to like the level that I want to get to, then it's probably in my future.
Yeah. And how young are you now?
40.
Nice. Okay, so you still have. Yeah, that's pretty young. There's some guys. Yeah. It does feel like a kind of. Oddly enough, it's the kind of sport that there's certainly a major athletic component to it, which favors people who are younger. But there are a lot of people I see who are quite a bit older, who are very competitive, like honestly, in their 50s.
Most of the winners of like the Backyard Ultra format that I mentioned are older, like they're in their 40s. So a lot of them, sometimes even in their 50s. So it's pretty awesome when like a 50-year-old can compete with a 26-year-old, for example.
Yeah.
And also there's no difference stats-wise between females and males in that format as well. So there's no two divisions in that format. There's just one division because of it. Statistically, like females do at least as good as the males in that super long distance format.
Really? Is there a mileage where it evens out?
I think speed-wise there's a difference, but for the backyard format where it's just like see what your endurance is and how long it can go, there's no difference. Yeah.
Wow, it's kind of interesting. I wonder if that's like an evolutionary trait where if people throughout our history, for tens of thousands of years would have to make really long journeys, tribes of people.
There probably is something like that, because otherwise... you would only have, like, for example, males making it to the destination, not females. Yeah. So you need both. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And do you tune into? You mentioned podcasts, but do you think about work? Some people I know will process really complex ideas and have insights while they're running.
It's kind of like in the shower. Sometimes you'll have some insight. The same thing happens with running, like because your mind's you allow your mind to wander. I do a lot of audiobooks when running, and if I'm like super tired, I'll upgrade to music and you grind out the rest of the run in that case.
Yeah. There's somebody I was talking to recently who said that he had a kind of a good explanation about how that works. He was talking about walking next to people, like a walk and talk with a coworker or something, and the concept he laid out was that when you're walking, unlike when you're sitting, you have information processing going on. And so that's using up a big part of your conscious attention. And then the subconscious mind is what you can more easily shift the conversation into the subconscious. And that subconscious layer can put together patterns that are more abstract and not as literal or logical. And that's kind of the insight moment, is when the non-rational intersects with our conscious mind. And
cool.
I don't know to what degree that is true, but it does resonate with me.
I do know, like I have my basement, I have a treadmill with a desk kind of built into it. And a lot of times I'll walk and work. And I do find that the time that I'm walking and working, I'm like ultra productive at all times. So your mind doesn't get as lazy, I guess, when you're kind of.
Really?
Yeah.
So even deep technical work you can do while walking?
Yeah, I do coding and everything. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I always found really technical work incredibly challenging if anything else is going on. This could just
no, I think it's just like subconsciously you can just kind of get in the zone, maybe easier. I don't know. But mind you, like when I'm doing that, it's a very slow pace. You're just really walking slow, but you're still walking.
Yeah. Do you see yourself staying deeply technical for the rest of your career, or do you see a change to getting more into, I mean, obviously you're leading the technical team now. I guess maybe another way to ask that question is, are you still deep in the technical weeds today?
Yeah, I still do like a ton of coding, more than I probably should in my current role. But so it's always interested me a lot. I guess I have an obsessive personality. That's why I do the running as well. But we got hooked into coding and programming and tech things really early on, and spent tons and tons of time on it. So it still keeps me motivated. Like I'm never looking at the clock. When I first started working when I was young, I was growing up on a farm, for example, and it was like watching the clock, watching the minute hand go by at all times, trying to wait for the end of that day. And that made me a really hard worker, I think, but it sucks.
Why were you watching the clock? Because you didn't like what you were doing?
Working at a farm, it's like you're on your hands and knees, and it's mind numbing. There's no, you're not working your mind at all, so it was pretty bad for me. But doing this, I love it. It's just what I would do if I'm not doing anything with my family or something, and I'm on my computer, I would just go to do the same thing anyways. Like it's just fun for me, I guess.
You go code and build something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any projects outside of Brave, or I guess your Brave is all encompassing?
I was so huge on projects, like personal projects, for the longest time, like maybe like 20 years before Brave. But now it's like there's just so much that I'm doing, and it's highly aligned with my interests. So personal projects are combined with work at this point, I think. But maybe eventually one day I would like to just kind of work on my own things. There's like a compression challenge to, like it's a competition, and there's a monetary reward as well to see how small you can get this file down to, this Wikipedia data down, basically. So that's always interested me to try to win that. But,
Is there a theoretical limit to that?
Yeah, there is.
I
don't know what it is, but at some point, you need to have that entropy in there. It's just how low can you get that too? So
it's kind of interesting. Anything else you want to throw out there? Any other, pieces of advice, books, people to follow, projects? If not, that's fine too, but. No,
Andreas Antonopoulos' books are really good if you're like a deep technical person, like Mastering 3 and Mastering Bitcoin. Those are really good reads. Audiobook wise, I like Endurance, David Goggins stuff. I like to listen to that. Pumped up.
David Goggins is great. Yeah. Good energy. definitely the hard energy. Yeah. And you have a site, brianbondy.com. And you're pretty active on Twitter. Are you active in any other social networks, or mostly just Twitter?
Mostly just Twitter. I have like a Facebook account, LinkedIn account that I haven't logged into for years or checked. Have like hundreds of
sure.
requests that are ignored right now.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, Brian, thanks so much, man. I really enjoyed getting to know you more, and big supporter of what you guys have accomplished, and wish you all the best.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.